All right, everybody, welcome back to the I Believe podcast. Today we are talking about giving your diagnosis with some of the guys in our community. I'm joined again with Mike and with Chris, both of whom have been guests on the podcast before. So say hi, Mike from Columbus, Ohio, and
Hello.
also Chris from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And we were just cracking up at my juvenile notice of the two capitals of the states that they're both from the capitals. I'm like, it's been a while since I've learned those. But thank you guys for listening and tuning in. If you're coming in on YouTube or on a podcast platform, we're so appreciative of our audience. But before we get into it, I want to ask each of you, what is one thing that you're focused on in your life outside of cancer as of like today? Chris, can I have you go first?
Sure, of course. I would say that just focusing on work right now and my personal home life. I'm trying to have normal everyday days as much as I can. There's a lot of travel that's been involved in what we have to go through, and so every day that we're at home or able to come into work is just a blessing to me. And so I just focus on the people around me and just try to stay positive every day.
Awesome. Okay, and Mike, what about you? One thing you're focused on.
I think for me right now, I'm in a weird spot right now because I just had a treatment, so I can't really do anything. But I've been trying to stay as physically fit as possible. So it's been a lot of work with, I do a lot of running. Right now I'm in a you can't run stage right now because you just had a treatment last Monday. So whenever I get the all clear, hopefully within the next few days or so, I'll start back up again and keep rolling on that just to try to maintain a good healthy weight and keep the heart good for whenever you have to have a procedure and things like that. So that's what I've probably been focused on the most right now.
No, I love it. Okay, so Mike, what kind of running do you do? Do you do distance or do you do it kind of shorter?
I do distance training. So like
Okay.
I trained to run in the Columbus Half Marathon this year. I didn't run though. Unfortunately, the weather was exceptionally bad for the race. It was like 45 degrees and pouring down rain, and I was like, I've got supposed to be have a Hepzato treatment 2 weeks after that, and I was like, that I can't afford to get sick. So I
Yeah.
did all the training. I was ready to go, but
Mhm.
just holding off and doing the right thing for me, and that's the one part that was a little disappointing. But you did the train, you can't stop the training,
I
so it
mean,
was still all
you
good,
can't
right?
say you didn't do something. You did some
Right.
really awesome training for it.
That's
And
right.
then Chris, what do you do for work?
So I run a food pantry. So essentially, people who are struggling with food insecurity. I manage a center. We serve about 2,500 people a month, and I get to work with a lot of really great people who are volunteers of mine. I have 95 volunteers that work for me in this center, and they just give me a lot of positive energy every time I'm around them. They're giving back every day, and it makes me feel like I'm able to give back as well to the community. So it's really important. I work at a pantry that's sort of in my neighborhood, so I'm only 8 minutes away from home. And these are people that I know in the neighborhood who are just struggling right now. So it's very positively uplifting to work with those individuals to see, just how we might be able to support them and help them through the troubled times they're going through right now.
I think that's so incredible. And I feel like both of you just have something that is really specifically giving you purpose and meaning
Hmm.
outside of cancer, right?
Yeah.
Even if it's somehow related to it, right? Like because Mike, you said you're training, but it's also kind of got the extra layer of the bonus that your cardiovascular health is going to be up there because you're training like for half marathons. And so obviously your cardiovascular health is going to be in good shape, which has a net benefit for treatment. But I think that it's so important to point out to those of you guys listening that we're finding things to focus on. Yes, like maybe distractions for sure, but also this is something that gives you meaning and purpose, and it doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be this grandiose thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to get a little bit more into that as we go, but I wanted to talk a little bit more, kind of about the diagnosis journey. So, Mike, how long has it been since you were diagnosed in your eye?
Wow, it's been 8 years.
Okay, and Chris, how about
Has
you?
it been 8 years?
July 24, so it's just
Okay,
been
so
a year
really
and a
new.
half.
Man,
Yeah.
man, Chris, you're the baby.
I am the baby. I hear it all the time. I've been through
That's
a lot
okay.
though in that year. So
Yeah, I know it's a lot. It's for sure a lot.
yeah.
So Chris, I'm going to actually have you go first on this question, but what do you remember most about the day that you found out that you had ocular melanoma?
I remember my biggest concern was that I might lose vision. Even though I was already blind, I couldn't see out of my right eye, but I was concerned that it might be permanent, that wasn't repairable. I didn't even know, I didn't even strike me as being a dangerous cancer. The doctor told me that there's a lesion in my eye, and when I talked to Shields about 3 weeks later, I understood a little bit more about it and how serious it was. But initial diagnosis was, am I going to lose my eye or not? And I'll deal with it if I lose my eye. I didn't realize it was a lifetime journey that we have to go through.
Yeah, absolutely. Mike, I know it's been a little while for you, but what do you remember about the first day that you found out? And if you would rather, we can actually focus on the first day you found out about metastatic disease, if that's a little easier.
What's interesting is like I remember I remember the first one a bit more.
Okay.
But it's interesting on that one because it was like I remember going to just a regular optometrist and them telling me I had a detached retina, which was true, but that wasn't the problem, right? Detached retina caused by the tumor, and then the person who I went. The ophthalmologist they referred me to, getting in there and seeing that guy on an emergency basis, thinking that I'm going to have to deal with one type of surgery, only to find out that no, you have a different problem. That's the big one I remember, is how quickly it went from one problem to a different, more serious problem. You need to go see this doctor to get it confirmed, and that happened 2 days later, and everything was confirmed. When I went in, it was found out I was metastatic. It was like I read the scan before I went in, and I remember thinking, "Oh, that's not great. Let's see how is this what I think it is?" And they came in and told me, "Yeah, it's exactly what it is." So it was like the next day. I think I got a preview like a day prior, and I knew exactly what was going to happen when I got in there. And it wasn't fun, but I was also like mentally prepared already, kind of like, "Hey, what's my plan going to be? What am I going to do?" And we were already like using the resources that are available online from groups like Ocular Insight and other places out there to figure out, hey, where can I go? What can I do? Which was useful versus like, we have to advocate for ourselves a lot. So I remember that. Like, it was like one of the first times I was really like, hey, it's time to advocate again, which, I did earlier on, but this was like the first time I was really like getting to use those muscles, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you make a really good point kind of between the two of your stories is that, like, Chris, you expressed that the primary diagnosis, I mean, you're just kind of thrust into this. Like, it just, you go to an eye visit and then, like, all of a sudden you're being given a cancer diagnosis.
Yeah.
And then the dust settles, so to speak, and you learn more over time from your doctor or from being referred to a medical oncologist, whatever the journey might look like for you. Maybe you have some period of stability like Mike did where there's nothing really going on, but you're just continuing monitoring. And then if the metastatic bomb kind of lands in your lap, hopefully you've had a little bit of time to garner some knowledge and to learn from your doctor or learn from other patients. And it doesn't, like Mike said, it doesn't make it more fun. It's never fun, but it doesn't make it easier so much as it just makes it something that you're maybe a little better equipped for. It's not so much of a surprise. Because you've been warned, right? Like versus with ocular melanoma, the first time you get the eye diagnosis, like nobody warns you, like, hey, you might be able to get cancer in your eye, just a heads up.
Yeah,
Like, nobody tells you that when you walk into the eye doctor's office. Like, that's not what's on anybody's mind. That's like, I need glasses. Help make sure that I can see. That's it.
I was going in for cataract surgery when they diagnosed me because I couldn't see out of my right eye, and they said I had a very dense cataract. So that's how that came about. Was the ophthalmologist was the one who identified it, not my optometrist. My optometrist said, "You have a cataract, so let's get you scheduled for an ophthalmologist to have the cataract removed." And that's when we discovered that it was a very large tumor that was causing the cataract. So,
Man, that's crazy.
yeah.
Like, that's absolutely crazy. Okay, well, we talked a little about kind of this initial diagnosis, but like we said, the dust settles eventually, whether it's with metastatic disease or with your primary eye diagnosis. And so, for those of our listeners who are maybe in the beginning of one of those phases, when the dust settled for you, what helped you to start moving forward?
Good question. I feel like so. How do I want to phrase this? I have a strong personality wise, I have a bias towards action. So I'm not a big waiter. Like I was in the midst of like the dust never really settled because I was always like trying to figure out, okay, what's going on here? So like I remember when I was first diagnosed, I posted something on Facebook and got reached out to somebody from my past who was like, hey, you remember my father had this, and I'm like, how the heck do you, does this happen, right? Like I just random connection from my past, and he's like, you need to go see Shields, and I was like, cool. I was already planning on asking because I have family in Philadelphia. Maybe I should just go there. He's like, you need to go there and get it done. He's like, my father's been alive for 15 years since diagnosis, is still swimming in the Pacific or something. And I was like, okay, cool. So there was some stuff there because there was some hope because I had obviously done all the reading that you did when you start. And you're like, this is not great, not feeling so positive right now. And you're in that, fight or flight panic mode. Happened to have that connection. And it was like a little bit soothing where I was like, okay, I'm going to go talk to my doctor. We're going to talk about what's going on here locally. I'm going to ask her to see if she can put in a feeler for me down in Philly, see if they can see me sooner. Because Dr. Sabula at Ohio State, she's great, but she was like, it'll take, 4 to 6 weeks to get the plaque ready and do all this, and me with a biased action. I'm like, that sounds like torture. So I was like, what can I do to accelerate things? And I still remember being in Home Depot. I was just at that Home Depot today, down there at Home Depot, and I got a call from Dr. Sabula at 5 o'clock on Saturday saying, be in Philly on Monday. You have an appointment, right? So it was like she made the call. We got the appointment. I was on a plane on Sunday going back out there to, get started with the process. And that to me was that bias towards action was like really, really what helped me get through like past any dust settling. It was more like, yeah, the dust is behind me to keep the metaphor and phrase. Like that dust is going to be my feet moving towards the next piece. Did a similar type of thing with metastatic, where when I found out about that, I was like talking to a friend who actually knows the folks at the Philly clinic. She works in the same hospital, who said, you let me know if you need me to, put in a call. And 24 hours later, I said, hey, make that call for me. So she did. And then I was out there doing a treatment because Hepzato was in the state of not being approved yet. It was like approved, but you couldn't get it anywhere. So they had something I could do. So I went and did that versus immediately starting a, Chemtrack, which I was luckily eligible for. But, that I was like, what can I do? I'm going to go do something. So that's like, to me, the dust is always back there somewhere to keep it from settling. And I just want to keep going ahead of it.
Yeah.
So.
No, I think that's a really good point. Chris, what about you?
So after the initial diagnosis, I was sent to Shields as well down at Wills Eye Hospital. And they determined that it was a large tumor, and I was given 2 options at the time. A nucleation, where they were scheduling me for that Thursday to remove my eye, or I could start the Darrow study as long as I could pass through all the qualifications to get qualified for it. It was an easy decision for me. I wanted to try to keep my eye if I could. I had good information from the doctors. Dr. Lawley and Dr. Shields were amazing. They filled up my head with all of the information, and they both agreed that the right move would be to try the trial, give it a shot. So I felt like there was no better option than just trusting their word and their confidence in this trial. So I was sent over to Jefferson that day to meet with Dr. Orloff for a medical oncology exam, and I had to jump through a few hoops, but I was accepted into the Darrow trial within 2 months, and I was on the medicine, and I stayed on the medicine for a full year, right up to 6 months, and then I had plaque therapy, which again was just like you, Danae. I think it was the largest. They do 22 millimeters or whatever. So I wasn't confident about anything, whether vision-wise, because I had been blind at that point now in my right eye. I had not seen in over a year and a half. I can now see out of my right eye following the therapy and 3 surgeries now. To try to repair some of the damage. So I've got some vision back. So again, a lot like Mike was saying, I just jumped on the opportunity. I wasn't waiting or trying to, figure out what might be the best. I really trusted the doctors, and they pushed. They didn't push. They encouraged this direction, and to me, the dust is behind me, just like Mike is saying. So, I was on Darrow for a full year, including the plaque therapy. I've got a little bit of vision back in my right eye. I have some lesions on my liver, but we're not. Everything's stable. So we're just monitoring now, and so the dust is still settling, I guess, as you tried to put it. But I know that there's going to be a dust storm ahead again. So every day we just try to stay positive and stay ahead of the dust storm, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the things that you guys talked about at the beginning when we like initially started was some of the things that we focus on outside of our cancer diagnosis. For our listeners, like, can we talk a little about like in the midst of any of this going on, right? Like active treatment or the kind of the in-between phases, what do you feel? I mean, I guess there's two parts to that question. It's like, how do you keep life feeling normal when you're in treatment? Maybe that's the first question.
Yeah.
And then how do we keep life feeling normal when we're not, right? When we're kind of playing the waiting game.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that's definitely something that can be really tricky, especially when you have, like Mike said, a bias towards action. And I think I'm probably that way. I'm a little bit of a bias towards action and maybe a heavy researcher.
Mm-hmm.
But at some point, there's only so much we can do, right? There's only so much we can do at one point. And sometimes we kind of are forced by the situation to slow down or to wait or, whatever is happening. So how do you keep life feeling normal in those moments? Chris, do you want to go first?
Sure. So my wife and I have discovered that we love glamping now. So we
I love it.
we have when initial diagnosis was July, in September we decided that we would love to try glamping for something different. So we went away, just the two of us and a dog, and we rented, I don't even know what you call it, a glamp tent site. That was wonderful on a farm range with plenty of space, and we learned that we just loved being able to go instead of the whole build up to going camping where you have to prepare so much.
Yes.
We knew we didn't have the energy to be able to do all that, but so glamping gave us an opportunity to enjoy just being outside again, just as a couple, doing things that we'd never done before. And so we've been glamping now. We've rented a house on a lake. So we're learning to try to spend weekends because unfortunately, with all of the treatments, a lot of this does take up time from PTO, from work and things like that. So we can get away for a weekend. And so we try to stay on top of each other about, hey, let's do something for ourselves just to get away and forget about the travel to Philadelphia and the Doubletree Hotel all the time. Because sure, I'm building some great Hilton Honors points, but it's nice to do something for ourselves once in a while. I'm tired of staying in hotels. So we try to do things that are just outside of what feels like a treatment, which means, in my mind, anytime I stay in a hotel now feels like it's work related or treatment related. So anything that's not a hotel is wonderful.
I love it.
Yeah.
Mike, what about you?
Well, it's interesting. I'm in a situation in my life where both of my children are only around in the summers right now because they're away at college. So it provides some unique opportunities I didn't have before around travel. So my wife and I have looked at travel as best I can. When I was on ChemTrack, it was a little interesting because you had to line things up so that you could make sure you didn't skip too much time. So everything was like, I can get a treatment done this day, and then I can get on a plane in the afternoon. And how terrible is that going to feel when I'm itching, or do we have to wait a day? And we figured all that stuff out, but definitely took some trips on that. Otherwise, it's like how do you keep those hobbies going on? So whatever hobby it is that you have, there's certain hobbies I can't do anymore, or I don't enjoy them as I once did. Like, very difficult to play golf these days with one eye. It just isn't the same. So I don't play that as much as I used to. So that's the clubs are kind of in the closet. But I will I will stay as positive I can. I'll watch my two professional teams here in Columbus Blue Jackets and the crew. I'll watch them. I'll pay too much attention to them. Actually, the funny thing is that when I first was metastatic cancer, the crew was in the middle of a big playoff run. They ended up being champions that year. And one of the things I'll bring up that I keep with me, because and I found out it's an old quote, but said a couple different ways. But I keep it with me because I use it every time I think that like things aren't going so well. But after they were victorious, they were interviewing the coach Wilfried Nancy, who's a Frenchman, and he said at the time, like, how did you do it? He said, impossible is an opinion. And so I keep that with me all the time, because when you're going through this and things are just like, there's some dark moments, right? As you're going through this stuff, and you have to remind yourself like, oh, it's an opinion that this is impossible, that you can't make it a few more days further, a few more days down the road. So I keep that with me as I go along. It's just, it just sparked that memory when you were talking about like, what do you do to keep things normal? And that was like, I was in the middle of flying out to Philly. I went to the championship game. It was on a Sunday. I was on a plane Monday morning to go get a chemoembolization. So I remember that pretty well, because that was part of that whole beginning journey, just under 2 years ago. So, yeah.
No, I love that. And when we were talking with the ladies who were talking about this too, like the giving diagnosis direction, Lindsay Brown, she mentioned something that she talks about in her like keynote talk, and she said fear is an acronym for forgetting every available resource. And I'm like, oh, like I feel like that goes hand in hand with the whole like impossible is an opinion, because we can be afraid, we can choose to find the resources, or we can sit in kind of the woe is me and we get stuck and spiral. And it's not that it doesn't happen, but
how do you be brave in the face of this?
Yeah.
Right? How do you keep going forward and try to live your life the best way that you know possible in the face of the adversity? And when you have those dark moments, it's like someone would say it's impossible to do that. No, it's not. You can do this, right? And
No, I love that.
We all are going to go through those cycles, right? I think every one of us has been through those spirals, or whatever you want to call it. You just have to. Everybody's different, so I don't want to just say it's easy. It's not easy, right? But it's very important.
I mean, it is very much a roller coaster.
Yeah.
And to understand that when you get to that low place, you don't necessarily have the guarantee you're going to stay there. I think that we all have a pretty good track record of getting to the bottom of that peak and then rising at some point in some way, shape, or form. Like we have a good track record for getting back up. And I think that, ultimately that's what I like to think of as resilience, right? It's choosing to get back up, even if you've been knocked down, choosing to get back up, even if it feels impossible.
I work for a Christian organization, and so my faith, I am a Christian, and I'm proud of it, but not everybody might feel or believe. But, I have this sign behind me. It looks reversed in my camera anyways. It just says, with God, all things are possible. That's on purpose. That's for some of us who have faith and are Christian. We do put a lot of faith and prayer and support from others who are believers who are praying for us. So we do believe that with God all things are possible. So bad news doesn't have to be bad news. There might be a purpose behind some bad news that might make us a better person, or it might open a new door for us that, a better relationship with your family. You care more, you're around more, you think more about being, I guess, just intentional in everything you're doing. So those are kind of the things as a Christian that I keep my faith in. That
Castle Biosciences is a proud sponsor of this I Believe podcast. Castle's innovative uveal melanoma tests provide valuable information about the risk of your eye cancer spreading to help you and your healthcare team individualize the management of your disease. To learn more, visit castlebiosciences.com.
Well, I love that you guys have kind of morphed into this part of the conversation, because this is exactly what we were going to talk about next, that I kind of feel like we already covered it, but you guys talked a lot about, yes, like things that help keep life feeling normal, but also specific ways that help you stay grounded and positive, and also like some of the things that have changed for you in a positive way. So, with that kind of in mind, are there any other things that you'd like to share around, having this diagnosis and what it's changed for you, or kind of forced you to focus on, that maybe you could spin it as like, okay, like that's actually a kind of a good thing, right?
What's interesting on that, and I haven't really talked about my work, but where I work, I basically have some folks who work alongside me, and our job is to help people produce better software. And I'm at the point in my career where it's like I'm not doing the work as much anymore. A bunch of people are like learning how to do it well. And what I realized was like my personality is like kind of I want to tinker and do it myself and that type of thing. I spin the negative into a positive. The negative is I know my time's limited, right? So my positive I'm spinning on that is like, how do I make more of me? How do I make more people who can do the things that I do, which is actually the right thing to do for me in my position, but it doesn't come naturally all the time. So again, it's a little weird, but it's helped me in that respect. It's one of the unusual things that's helped me is it's like, hey, how do I make sure that this person I'm working with can do what I'm doing right now? How do I make sure the next person can do what I'm doing right now?
Yeah.
So
Well,
that's very
it's
useful.
like in a
It's
small
useful for me
way.
mentally.
Yeah, like it's like in a small way building your legacy, right? Like in
Right.
in that little focus of your life, it's that pocket. You're building your legacy here. Chris, you like with your job and with what you do and the community that you serve, like you're building an impact, right? Over time,
Right.
like you're just gradually expanding your reach and expanding kind of the ripple effect that you as a person have on the
Hmm.
world around you. And I think that's maybe something that happens for each of us, is that we realize with this cancer diagnosis that ultimately we are making some kind of a difference in the world, and
Yeah.
that difference matters, right?
Right.
And then we kind of have this desire to want to do more of it. So we ultimately, I think that as patients, we can find ways to stay grounded and stay positive, but also like these things are things that help to keep us present with our everyday life. And like Chris, community service, and Mike, like focusing on training or on the ways that you're going to leave a legacy, like those are things that help kind of increase the way that we want to stay present in our life.
Hmm. Yeah.
And I think, cancer kind of forces you to confront that, right? To just not passively let life pass you by. Like we have to really be a little more intentional, because like Mike said, you realize, oh wow, like time is limited. Like maybe we're going to beat all the statistics, right? Maybe time won't be limited because of cancer, but like maybe it does really force you to confront the idea of mortality. And the best thing that can come of that is not the fear, right?
Right.
It's the presence, and it's the ability and the ways that you can make a difference. So when things get really hard for you, what's one thing that keeps you going? And you guys may feel free to like kind of tag on something that you've said before, but like, I mean, when you get bad news, or when you get difficult, I don't even want to say bad, when you get difficult
Yeah.
news,
Yeah.
what keeps you going?
It sounds silly, but it's the small things. I've learned, I mean, I've always enjoyed cutting grass, but I really love putting on headphones and cutting grass. We have a very large yard, a couple of acres, and I can get on my tractor and cut grass for 2 or 3 hours, and it's like a zone of my own, and it's just normalizing everyday life. And it's a way that I can sort of leave the bad news behind for a little while, just doing normal things in life. So that's kind of one of those things that I use as an outlet for myself.
I also love mowing grass, but
Yeah.
I think of it differently. It's a routine like meditation type state you can get yourself into. So whether
Right.
you
It's like
like go
grounding.
through and like I think of all the things in my life that have given me this type of thing, it would be, and I apologize, my dog has decided to whine. Um, it would be like going to church has
Right.
routine and meditative properties to it. Running, when I do that, has meditative properties to it where you get yourself into that run. People will talk about a runner high and things like that, but it really you get to start focusing on something, and eventually time starts slipping before you're able to like let your mind wander in and focus on your breathing and that type of stuff. Those types of things help. They help for me anyway. Is that any of those types of things, even if it's like purposeful and I'm just hanging out at home and I'm just like a friend of mine who I've known at my job here for about 3 years now, like he was like, "You've never meditated before?" Not purposefully. So he taught me meditation techniques, and that was great. I use it all the time. Actually, when I go into any type of doctor's appointment, they need to test my blood pressure. I'm like, well, time to meditate. Let's focus on that breathing, get that number down, things like that, because it's just it's helpful. So like those
Yeah.
types of things I find extremely useful. Anything that gets me into that like zone state.
No, I think it's really interesting to hear you guys talk about each of these things because I guess what I hear is like you're finding small things that you can control, right?
Right.
You can control your breathing in the moment. You can control the everyday routines that you engage with. And sometimes when things feel out of control, that's what we need the most is we just need a little bit of control, even if it's just something small. And I love what you said about meditation too, Mike, because I use meditation before and after, like, and during, any of the things that I've got going on with Hebzato. But I also have tapped into like hypnotherapy, which we've had a guest speak on the I Believe podcast and also come to I Believe like for the seminars. And he talks a lot about like the cellular benefits and like the studies that they've done. And so I'm a big data person. So I love seeing the studies around meditation or around hypnotherapy. And I'm like, oh, this is super cool science. Super cool that they've studied things like how the cells in our bodies respond, like by tracking labs and things like that. Yeah. But again, like I think it comes back to some sense of control when things feel out of control. So shifting gears, you guys both came, and I had the pleasure of meeting both of you in person at the I Believe conference that took place in Raleigh in not November, man, October. That's the month we're thinking of.
Yeah.
So just like a month or so ago, and it was so great to be able to meet you guys. Like, I mean, obviously we've connected on social media, we've talked a lot, like we've talked on podcasts, but it is a completely different experience, I think, to be able to meet other patients in person. So what have you found is the value, like, of going to events like that, or just connecting with patients online?
As the baby, I guess you keep calling, everybody calls me the newbie or whatever. I think it was just getting to talk to people who are experiencing things differently. We all have different stories. While we're all kind of going through the same thing, we all have different stories, and just hearing from people how they are handling the diagnosis, the treatments, what are their strengths, what are they bringing into their own lives that maybe I could do that could help us going forward. Not just that, just the support of everybody. I'm not a big Facebook person, but I've become a bigger Facebook person recently just because so many people have reached out through Facebook that I met at the conference. So it's just more people to reach out to connect with and hear their stories and be supportive of them while they're going through what they're going through, also knowing that they're going to support me with what I'm going through. So I think it's the support side of it. It's just the connections that we made. And of course, obviously meeting all of the pharmaceutical companies that were there, hearing the stories of improvements, the way that they're really researching this cancer was amazing to me, because it does sometimes feel like nothing's being done, but behind the scenes there's a lot going on that we might not read about every day, and there might be a new trial that's coming up, and it was very refreshing, I think, to hear that there are others who are professionals in this field who are really working towards some sort of maybe not a a full on cure, but maybe a better life, a longer life. So it was very refreshing to hear some of the presentations.
Yeah, no, I think you make all good points. Mike, do you have anything to add?
Well, I mean, I was fortunate to be able to go. I just, it was one of those things where I had a work trip in Charlotte. And so I was able to make it to Raleigh after my work stuff was over. I just didn't know how long my work stuff was going to be. So I feel very fortunate I was able to attend. And I would echo most of the things there that Chris said. I'm trying to think of what else I would tack on. But I think it was, for me, it had been like probably the first time I met a bunch of folks in person. So which is very useful, very different conversations than what you're doing on Facebook. I mean, there's a couple people I've met from, like, they recognized me and I was like, Oh, wait, oh, you're them. Oh, okay, great. That type of thing
Yeah.
from Facebook, which was useful, especially for me, because I try to avoid Facebook pretty much at all costs anymore, except for the groups, because that's where
Yeah.
they are. Um, I got a lot of benefit out of the second day for sure, where we were talking about with the doctors, bringing up what's going on and just going over the stuff. It's not like it was anything, there wasn't a ton I hadn't already heard, but it was good to hear it presented in that way, make sure I didn't miss anything coming up. So I feel very fortunate to have been able to stop in and do all of that. I was very, very happy that I was able to make it happen. So I'd encourage others, if you're able to make it happen, make it happen. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so thank you guys both for sharing just about your experiences of meeting other patients and just the benefit of going to live events, because I really think that's something that, like you said, Mike, it's a privilege, right? For sure. Like to be able to figure that out and have that coordinate, have all the balls kind of line up in a row so that you can attend a live event. But it is worth it if you can make it happen. So I just would encourage you guys, stay tuned for our I Believe that we have coming up for 2026. Stay tuned for dates and locations. Pretty sure we're going to be in Texas, so that's going to be fun. But as we kind of shift gears towards closing, do you guys feel like sharing your story? And I guess I want to ask this of you because you are gentlemen who, I think social media is a different experience for someone like me who is like a baby. I'm a baby. Like I have grown up with social media and I use it a lot, right? Like so I shared on social media constantly, and I still do, like as things kind of ebb and flow with my diagnosis. Have you guys found value in like talking about your diagnosis throughout, whatever you have going on, or do you feel like there's kind of phases that you just kind of check out and just like, nah, like I'm not going to post anything right now. Like I don't have anything nice to say.
Well,
Go ahead, Chris.
I'll go ahead and answer first. Janae, I've posted a couple of times things that I would never say in the ministry I work in, out of frustration on social media, to people and an audience of people that are close to me. So I find it's an outlet for me. I do share every time I'm in Philadelphia for treatments. I just say it's a beautiful sunny day in Philadelphia. Everybody knows where I am and what I'm going through. So I use it as an outlet more than anything now, and including maybe sharing some things that I would love to say out loud that I just won't say out loud, but I'll put them on social media, which is funny. But people seem to understand it more through social media, where I might say something about how angry I am about cancer. It's we're going through so much with just the treatments and the testing and the results that we get back that we don't understand. When you try to read them, it doesn't make any sense, and you have to wait another week to see your oncologist. Or I just recently had a new diagnosis of squamous cell carcinoma on my head, that's now going to be treated. But thank God, with a great oncologist in Philadelphia who is helping me find a right dermatologist in Philadelphia who can get it done much sooner than I can get it done here. So I just find I use it as a frustration outlet more than anything, I think, because it does. There's a lot of encouragement through the community that we've built, especially through a Kieran site. The people that I've met through that Facebook group have been amazing. Because they've all been there before me, most of them. I mean, I'm still the newbie. I know that, but I'm still going through what everybody else has been through. So it's great to have feedback from others. Just somebody just sharing a silly meme hug or something means a lot. So I think that's kind of where I am with that right now.
Oh, I love that. Thank you.
I was going to say, for me, I'm a longtime user of social media. I just have been trying to pare it down recently, just because it's become toxic in some respects, for me. So I try to like stay away from certain topics, but I do tend to post every time I'm in for like a treatment recently, which gets some notice from like longtime friends who know what I'm going through. But it's like it's not so much like shouting into the void is like it's basically I don't want to do that. Is I guess is the folks who understand are in the support groups, and if I feel like I want that support, I'm going to go post directly there versus just talking to the world because they don't understand, and it's okay. I've come to terms with that. It's like folks do not understand what this is. They can't understand. It's the same things when somebody just says, "Well, you're going to lose your eyesight, right?" Like that sounds terrible, and you're like, "That's
Yeah,
not
like
even
that's
the
all they want
problem."
to ask you about.
Sorry,
Yeah.
sorry, that's not even the problem, right?
Yeah.
They can't understand it, and that's okay. But like I do have fun things. Like there are some folks I know that they do a comedy podcast based on the soccer team I mentioned earlier, and those guys know I'm going through stuff, and they jokingly said Mike's got to lie on his back for like 3 hours or some crazy stuff that I posted in one of their threads, and they were like joking about it, said we got to get to 3.5 hours tonight so he has something to listen to. So like things like that make me laugh. They bring me some spirit. So like there are people who know stuff, but they don't. It's just a little vents here and there. Let people know that you're out there and you're going through some stuff. Whatever it takes for you is really the important bit. But like I said, for me, when I'm in that spot where I'm really needing the support, I'm going to go to that's when I'll be posting to the Facebook groups then. So, and talk to the patients because they're the ones that truly understand what's going on. Nobody else does.
Yeah. No, you make some really good points, both of you. So for our listeners, if anybody who is listening just got this diagnosis like today, let's just say they happened to find this podcast. What is something that you would want to tell someone who just got a diagnosis of ocular melanoma right now?
Find a really good ocular oncologist. There's several of them throughout the country. Make sure that you're dealing with somebody who really understands what this is, who treats it regularly. There's centers across the country, but I wouldn't say don't go to a regular oncologist, but make sure that you're communicating with the ocular oncologist first to plan a treatment and be open to their suggestions of opportunities for trials because you might miss an opportunity. I've added, as far as I'm concerned, the Darrow study that I was on has added a year onto my life because it protected me for an entire year. It shrank the tumor in my eye. It protected my vision. I've got some vision back. So listen to the oncologists who are specialists in this and consider the trials they might be talking about. That would be my biggest recommendation.
I would double down on that. You definitely get a team built. Obviously, the big cancer centers, the 30 big ones around the country are more likely to have somebody who understands what this is. But that's not necessarily 100% true, right? When you look at some of the specialists out there, they are not at the big centers. But you've got to build a team of an ocular oncologist and then an oncologist who either is a specialist in this or knows who the specialists are and is not afraid to talk to them. I think that's the situation I'm in right now. I have an ocular oncologist who, at this point, for where my journey is, I'm going to see her, I think, in a couple of weeks, but that's not the most important person of my team anymore. But the oncologist I have does, collaborate with the other specialists that are out there in his field. His main field is he's big into TIL, right? He's big into TIL for skin melanoma. That's his big major focus of study, and he knows that he doesn't have the knowledge on this particular type of cancer. So what does he do? He talks to the experts. He's out there talking to the doctors that Chris has, to say like, hey, I'm thinking of this, and this, what do you think? Like, you have to have a team that's willing to do that type of work, even if they're not a specialist in this thing, because there aren't that many people who specialize in ocular melanoma specifically. So you have to have somebody who's humble enough to know, I'm not a specialist in this, and I'm going to go talk to people who are, and then get the best treatment plan for my patients.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. Guys, if you're listening, take notes. These are good points.
Aura Biosciences is a clinical stage biotechnology company focused on developing precision therapies for solid tumors that aim to preserve organ function. Our lead candidate, Belsar, is currently in late-stage development for primary choroidal melanoma and in early stage development in other ocular oncology indications and bladder cancer. Our mission is to grow as an innovative global oncology company that positively transforms the lives of patients. For more information, please visit us at aurabiosciences.com.
Well, as we wrap up, let's talk a little about like, where do you feel like you want life to head for like the next 3 to 6 months? Where do you want the direction your life is going right now to feel like? What's something that's keeping you, I guess, forward focused?
So I was very, very excited, right, out of the past couple weeks, right? So when we were all at the conference there in Raleigh, we were all waiting for trial previews to come out, like from the European big conference thingy. I'm
Yeah, the
forgetting.
ESMO conference.
Yeah, we were all waiting for that, and then we saw the results come back. And I remember talking to I have two oncologists right now at Ohio State. I have my main oncologist and a surgical oncologist, and they kind of trade who's like in charge of your care. So I'm talking to my surgical oncologist, and I'm asking him about the results that come out. And I was like, "What did you think?" He's like, "Oh yeah, I saw him." I said, "So what do you think?" And he's like, "I think this is standard of care." He's like, "It's not yet, but it's going to be to go with Chopin."
Yeah,
And
the Chopin
so
trial,
I
for
can't do Chopin, right? Because I've been on Hepzato 4 times, but we're going to do the best thing we can, which is basically I'm supposed to start the Ipi-Nivo in a week.
Yeah.
So I'm excited. Like when you see results like that, it's exciting. So it's about keeping like what type of thing can I do? I wanted to try to get on to the drug that Chris is on. Unfortunately, I was very aggressive early on and took crizotinib, and that disqualifies me from that trial back as a juvent way back 7 years ago. So there's looking for that next bit going forward. That's what I'm doing. I'm very excited to try this and see how it goes. So
I love it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Chris, what about you?
Well, I've been very aggressive in trying to get back on the Darrow study because I believe it should be standard of care at this point. With the way it shrank the tumor in my eye, that would be my ultimate goal. I've connected with several of them. The Darrow team that was there, I was able to spend a few minutes with and talk to, and they've invited me to potentially speak about something else at some point in the future, perhaps a commercial or something, or just a patient advocate. But as we talked about earlier about advocating for yourself, it's something that I did. I reached out to them while we were at the conference. So again, back to the conference, that's how important these things are, is you get to meet people face to face that are the leaders in this industry and making changes. But ultimately, honestly, when we talk about going forward, I try not to think too much about, I'll go back on a trial. I would love to be on a trial again. I just want to continue doing good in my community and impacting others, and just living my life every day like it's just a wonderful day. So as much as I want to talk about trials and things, I really just want to do good in my community and make an impact to others. So ultimately, that's really what I'm trying to focus on right now.
I love it. I love it. I'm like one of those people that hears phrases and then I hear a song. So I can't think of the whole song. So I'm not going to sing the whole thing, but it's like it's a beautiful day. Da, 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 da. Yeah, I don't remember the rest, but those kinds of things. But I feel like both of you make some really good points, right? Like you can have the forward focus around your diagnosis, but you can also have the forward focus around living your best life.
Yeah.
And just showing up every day as your best self and choosing intentionally as much as possible not to give cancer more time than it deserves.
Right.
So thank you both for sharing so openly and just being part of this conversation. I think what you've shown all of our listeners today is that, our diagnosis can change our path, right? None of us thought we were going to be here, but it doesn't have to take away how we control like the continuing of that, the direction we take our life. We can work with it, I think, right? We can definitely work with it.
Yeah.
So thank you guys both for being here.
Thank you today. Appreciate it. Good seeing you, Mike.
good to see
Yeah,
you.
it's good seeing you both. And just as a quick thanks at the end of our episode, I want to give a shout out to Castle Biosciences, Immunocore, Delcath Systems, and Aura Biosciences. Please check out their websites. Go head to our page on acurinsight.org And especially this time of year, we've got Giving Tuesday coming up. So please consider making donations directly to organizations like A Cure in Sight. Actually, just to us. We would love it because we have so many patient programs that we help, and we also really try to make sure that we have a source of financial aid for patients who need to travel for treatment or who just need a little extra boost. So contributing to fundraising efforts, be it at a 5K or any of our kind of events that we have going on social media, just stay in the know about those guys. And thanks again for listening, and we will see you guys next time.